Okay, so last class we were talking about factoring using the greatest common factor. So let's get going on that. Get some paper out for notes here. Okay, so we did some examples last class. We got started on it. So let's review what we did last time and then continue going today. By the end of class today, I hope that you will know how to factor using the greatest common factor in grouping. So that's our goal today, is to learn 2 different ways to factor. Okay, so this is section 5.5. Okay, so the first thing we did last class was just find the greatest common factor. If I gave you a few different things, so let's just do 1 or 2 of those. So if I'm giving you 8x to the 3rd and 10x to the 5th. Madison, to be counted present, you have to join live for attendance, but if you miss class and you're absent, you can go back and watch the previous videos. Okay, so the greatest common factor here between 8 and 10 is 2. And then with the x's, you think this person has, or this first one has 3 x's, this has 5 x's multiplied together. What do they have in common? What's the most each of them have? 3. So 2x to the 3rd is the greatest common factor there. Okay, let's do one more like that. If I had 12xy squared, 16x squared y to the 3rd, and 20x y. Let's do x squared y. Okay, so the greatest common factor of the numbers of 12, 16, and 20. 4 is the biggest number that divides into all of those. And then if you look at your x's, the first one has 1x, the second one has 2 x's, the third one has 2 x's. What's the most they have in common? Just 1x, And then the first one has 2 y's, second one has 3 y's, third one has 1 I. What's the y? What's the most they have in common? 1 y. So 4xy is the greatest common factor. Okay, the next thing we did was actually factor using the greatest common factor. Okay, so let me take that first problem and put a sign in the middle. 8x to the 3rd minus 10x to the 5th. Okay, so we factor by using the greatest common factor. The first thing you do is find the greatest common factor. What's the greatest common factor of 8x to the 3rd and 10x to the 5th? We already found it, right? Up here. 2x to the 3rd. So we write that at the beginning. 2x to the 3rd. And then we open parentheses. And then we divide. Okay, so you're thinking 2x to the 3rd times what gives me 8x to the 3rd, or divide it. What's 8 divided by 2? 4. And x to the 3rd divided by x to the 3rd, or think I have 3 x's here and I'm pulling 3 x's out. There's no x's left, right? So it'd just be 4. And then minus 10x to the 5th divided by 2x to the 3rd. 10 divided by 2 is 5. I have 5 x's, I'm pulling 3 out. So x squared would be what's left over. And that's your answer. Remember, you could check this by distributing it back in to make sure you end up where you started, but this is the answer. Okay, let's do a few more of those. Let me see real fast where we ended last time. Oops, sorry. So sorry. There we go. Oh, we did a few. Okay, so if I had the problem, let's do the next problem we did. 12xy squared plus 16x squared y cubed minus 20x squared y. Take a second and try to factor that if you haven't already started. Okay, so again, 4xy is the greatest common factor. When I divide that out or pull that out from each term, 12 divided by 4 is 3. I had an x, I pulled the x out. I have 2 y's, I pulled 1 y out, so what's left over? 1 more y. Okay, and then plus 16 divided by 4 is 4. I have 2 x's, I pulled 1 out. So there's 1 x left over. I have 3 y's here, I pull 1 out. So y squared, there's 2 y's left over. And then the minus sign, 20 divided by 4 is 5. X squared, I have 2 x's, I pull 1 out, is x. I have 1 y, I pull it out. So I don't, yeah, so you close parentheses, I'm done there. And that's your answer. Questions about that? Okay, so honestly, that's about as hard as the GCF thing gets. We're gonna do some more practice on it, but there's not, I mean, that's pretty much as hard as it gets. Let's look at this one. If I had 6x squared plus 15x plus 9. See if you can do that one. Okay, what's your greatest common factor here? 3. I can't take any x's out because the last one doesn't have an x. So if I take out a 3 and I divide everything out, 6x squared divided by 3, 2x squared, 15x divided by 3, 5x, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. And so that's your answer. Okay, so sometimes you can take out numbers and letters. Sometimes you can only take out numbers. Sometimes you can only take out letters. Okay, it just kind of depends on the problem. Look at this one. If I had 8a to the 4th minus 2a to the 3rd. Okay, what's the greatest common factor of 8a to the fourth, and 2a to the third? 2a to the third. Okay, so when I divide it out, 8 divided by 2 is 4. A to the fourth divided by a to the third is just a. And then minus, yeah, 2a to the third divided by 2a to the third is 1. Lots of people forget that minus 1. They just want to put 4a in the parentheses. You got to put the 1 there if you take everything out. Questions about that? Okay, let's do one last one, and then we're going to kind of move on to the next set of stuff. If I had 64x squared minus 8y. Okay, what's the greatest common factor here? 8. And when I take that out, left over is 8x squared minus y. Good with that? Okay, so the rest of the lesson today is not necessarily anything new. It's just kind of building on that. We're going to add a few rules. We're going to add a little bit more in each problem, but this essentially is all we're doing today. It's just taking out the greatest common factor. We may take it out 3 times in a problem. We may only take it out 2 times. Like, it just kind of depends on the problem. But this is essentially what we're doing for the rest of the day today. Okay, one thing about greatest common factor, if your first term is negative, for example, the problem, negative 3x squared plus 9. My first term right here, first term is negative. That is a problem. Uh-oh. You can't have a negative first term here because it messes everything up. So, and you'll kind of see that towards the end of the class today. So what we have to do is factor out a negative, okay? It could just be -1. That's the only thing you're factoring out. Or it could be like a negative, whatever your GCF is. So I'm going to go ahead and put like a negative number like that. So it could be like if your GCF is 5, you're factoring out a -5. If there's no GCF, you're just taking out -1. Okay, so in this problem, what's the GCF? 3. -3x squared and 9, the GCF is 3. My first term is negative, so I have to factor out a -3. Okay, so when I factor out a -3, -3x squared divided by -3 is just x squared. And then what's +9 divided by -3? -3. So notice when you factor out a negative, it changes all the signs of everything inside the parentheses. Okay, so if you finish and your signs aren't different from what you started with, you forgot to do something. Okay, so make sure that all your signs are different. And a lot of times we need for that to happen, so this is a really helpful thing for us. Let's do another one like that. What about if I had -2x squared minus 14x plus 10? Okay, so you're taking out your greatest common factor. What's your greatest common factor in this case? -2. The GCF is 2. The first thing's negative, so I have to take out a -2. When I factor out a -2, -2x squared divided by -2, it's just x squared. -14x divided by -2, plus 7x. So we took out a negative. And then +10 divided by -2, -5. And that's my answer. Questions about that? Okay, one more. If I have negative x to the third plus 7x squared minus 5x. Factor that one. Okay, so what are you factoring out here? A negative x. You could do negative 1x if you wanted to. It's the exact same thing. It doesn't matter. So if I take out a negative x, left over is negative divided by negative is positive. 3 x's, I took one out. So it'd be x squared. Positive 7x squared divided by negative x. So minus, so maybe it helps if you think it's negative 1. So 7 divided by negative 1 is negative 7. I have 2 x's, I took one out. So it'd be 7x. And then negative 5x divided by negative 1x, positive 5. So that's the answer. And you can put the 1 there. You don't have to put the 1. It's totally up to you. It's right either way. Okay, questions about that? Okay, so moving on. That's factoring by GCF. Done. Like the only way this is hard is if there's lots of letters or if there's more than 3 terms, but essentially this is the same thing. Okay, all your problems are going to look something like this. Okay, so we're going to move into factoring by grouping, but first let me show you one thing. What if I had a problem, this looks weird, but it's still the same idea. If I had a problem that looks like this, 2 times x minus 5 plus 3a times x minus 5. Oh, sorry, you can't see it. There you go. Give you a second to write it now. The person who joined on Zoom since I took attendance, it says iPhone and I forgot. I think we had this last time. Can you tell me who you are? Just chat and tell me what your name is so I can make sure I count you here. Okay. So here, looking for the greatest common factor. This is one term and this is one term. Okay. So of my 2 terms here, what do they have in common? X minus 5. It's weird, but this is the thing they have in common. So that is what I'm going to pull out. Hi, Javiana. I'm going to talk to you after class, so don't sign off until I talk to you for a second, okay? So we want to pull out the x minus 5s. To pull out the x minus 5s, I'm going to write it out front. This time I have to put that in parentheses because it's 2 different things. And when I pull it out of the first term, what's left over? 2. And when I pull it out of the second term, left over is plus 3a. And that's your answer. Okay, so that's actually easier than the other problems, right? Because it's already all broken down for you. It looks funny, but it's actually easier. Let's do one more like that. If I had 3x times x plus 4 plus 5b times x plus 4. Okay, so what's the greatest common factor? The x plus 4. And what's left over when I take it out? 3x plus 5b, right? Because this is the common factor I'm pulling out. When I pull it out of each one, I'm left over with 3x plus 5b. So this is my answer. Questions about that? Okay, factoring by grouping is a combination of all the things we just did. To factor by grouping, you have to have 4 terms. Notice that all the problems up until now, some had 2 terms, some had 3 terms. It was just kind of dependent on the problem. No matter what, to do grouping, you have to have 4 terms. There's no way to factor without 4 terms. Okay, so for example, if I had a problem that was AB minus 6A plus 2B minus 12. To factor this by grouping, the first thing I do is group this together. Okay, so if you were looking at this and you're trying to see if there's a greatest common factor all the way through, do all 4 of these things have something in common? No, these 2 have A in common. All 3 of these have a 2 in common, but there's nothing that they all have in common altogether, right? So the way we kind of fix that is we put them into 2 groups. So I'm going to group the first 2 together. And then the second 2 together, I'm going to group. Make sure you put that plus sign in front of the 2b. Stick that in the second group. Okay. So we're going to, first thing you do is put in 2 groups. And you always group the first 2 together and then the last 2 together. So now we're going to treat this like 2 different problems. Totally forget about the last part. Just look at the AB minus 6A. What is the greatest common factor of A, B, and minus 6A? 1, but it does have an A in common, right? So you could put 1A or just A at the beginning. When I factor out that A, AB divided by A, what's left over? B minus 6A divided by A would just be B minus 6. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Cover up the first set of parentheses and look at the other side. 2b and 12. What's the greatest common factor of 2b and 12? 2. Is it positive 2 or negative 2? Positive, because first thing's positive. So I'm going to put plus 2, a positive 2. Open my parentheses. When I factor out the 2, what's left over on the inside? B minus 6. And now notice, this looks like the problems we just did. What's the greatest common factor now? Yeah, this inside piece now is what matches. I'm going to pull that out. So B minus 6 at the beginning in parentheses. What's left over? A plus 2. And that's your answer. Okay, so recap, put in 2 groups, factor out the GCF of the first one, factor out the GCF of the second one, and then factor out the GCF again. So basically you're factoring out the greatest common factor 3 times to get your answer. Okay, so we're going to spend the rest of class doing those over and over. On Wednesday, we're going to learn a new method. The new method has 1 step at the beginning, technically 2 steps at the beginning, and then this is the end of your problem. So we're building on this for Wednesday. So like the goal for the next 20 minutes is to understand completely how to do factoring by grouping on your own, so that on Wednesday, when we add something to it, it's not like blowing your mind at that point. Okay, so let's do another one. If I had the problem xy minus 5x plus 2y minus 10. First thing you do is put it into 2 groups. Group the first 2 together and the second 2 together. When it's a plus sign, it doesn't really matter if you put it in the second group or not, but when it's a minus sign, it does. So just make it a habit to put that sign right there in the middle in the second group. take a second and factor out the GCF of the first one, or the first two, and then the last two. Okay, so the greatest common factor of xy minus 5x has an x in common. Left over is y minus 5. The second set has a positive 2 in common. Left over is y minus 5, right? And then the insides match. If the insides don't match, you probably did something wrong on that step, okay? The insides should always match. And then I pull out a y minus 5 because that's what they have in common. And left over is x plus 2. And that's your answer. Questions about that one? Okay, let's do another one. This one's a little bit more like the problems we're going to be seeing on Wednesday. X cubed plus 5x squared plus 3x plus 15, kind of. Okay, so the first two, x cubed and 5x squared, what's the GCF there? X squared. So you can take out an x squared. X cubed divided by x squared, what's left over? Just an x. And then 5x squared divided by x squared is 5. So x plus 5. The second set of parentheses, 3x plus 15. What's the greatest common factor there? 3. It's a positive 3. And when I take out a positive 3, left over is x plus 5. And then pull out the greatest common factor, x plus 5, and left over is x squared plus 3. Some people write this opposite. They do the x squared plus 3 and then the x plus 5 at the end. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. Okay? That's your answer. Questions about that? Okay, we're going to do one more, and then I'm going to show you the negative stuff that I was talking about. So if we had the problem, x squared minus 2x plus 5x minus 10. Take a second, do that one on your own. Okay, so on the first set of parentheses, x squared minus 2x, what's the greatest common factor there? Just x. When I take out an x, left over is x minus 2. The second two, 5x minus 10. I can take out a positive 5, and left over is x minus 2. And then now it has x minus 2 in common, and left over is x plus 5. And that's your answer. Everyone good with that? Okay, so what if that middle sign is a negative? Let's do one of those. So this is number 15. If I had the problem, let's do that. X cubed minus, no, x squared, sorry. X squared minus 3x minus 4x plus 12. Okay, so two sets of parentheses. Make sure you put that minus on the 4x in the second parentheses. What's the greatest common factor for x squared and 3x? X. So if I take out an x, left over is x minus 3. Okay, so before you do this next part, it's negative 4x and 12. What's the greatest common factor of negative 4x and 12? 4. It has to be a negative 4 because the first thing's negative. If you didn't do that, what would happen is, if you took out a 4, this would be negative x and then plus 3. Does that match this parenthesis? No, all the signs are different. So that's kind of a heads up whenever you go to do this problem. Don't forget that if the first thing's negative, you have to take out a negative 4. Okay, so when I take out a negative 4, what's negative 4x divided by negative 4? X. And what's 12 divided by negative 4? Negative 3. So now it has x minus 3 in common. Left over is x minus 4. Questions about that? Okay, let's do another one like that. If you had 4x squared plus 12x minus 3x minus 9. And pull out your GCF on both of them. For the first two, you can pull out 4x, and left over is x plus 3, right? For the second one, negative 3x minus 9, what's the GCF there? Negative 3. And when I divide out negative 3, negative 3x divided by negative 3, negative 9 divided by negative 3 is positive 3. So now my enzymes match. I can pull that out, x plus 3, and left over is 4x minus 9. Yeah. Yes, I don't know what I'm doing there. 4x minus 3, sorry. Okay, let me show you how some students make a mistake on that problem. I'm gonna work out that same problem, and I'm gonna show you the most common mistake that I see every single semester. Whenever you do your parentheses, lots of people do this right there. And so then they pull this out and it says 4x and left over is x plus 3. And they say, oh, okay, so now it's just a 3. When I divide it out, I get x minus 3. And then you get to this point and you say, oh, it doesn't match. And so they're like, we'll just fix that real fast. It's fine. And so then they fix it and then they pull it out and you get x plus 3 and then 4x plus 3 is your answer. Is that the correct answer? If it does not match, you did something wrong, okay? Don't just say, I'm just gonna put a plus sign there and to fix it real fast. So if it does not match, you gotta stop and go back and figure out what you did wrong. Usually it's because this parenthesis didn't include the negative and so you totally forgot about it. Or sometimes it includes it and then you still forget about it, okay? So if it does not match, go back up to the step before and figure out what you did wrong to get it to match. Don't just like make it match because you're not gonna get the right answer that way, okay? So let's do one that's kind of weird. This one's just a little bit weird. If I had 2x squared minus 10x plus x minus 5. Okay, so do your two sets of parentheses. Two x squared minus 10x. What's the greatest common factor there? 2x. When I take out a 2x, what's left over? X minus 5. For the next one, x minus 5, what's the greatest common factor? Okay, so it doesn't really have one, right? To make this work to where I can pull stuff out and still write it, I need to go ahead and put a 1 in front of it. Okay, so 1 is the greatest common factor. If there's nothing you can pull out from both of them, just stick a 1 in front of it, and you'll see why in just a second. So now they have x minus 5 in common. When I pull out an x minus 5, left over is 2x plus 1. Do you see how if you didn't stick that 1 in front, it might be confusing to write your answer there? Okay, so even though it seems silly to put a 1 there, go ahead and just stick a 1 if there's nothing in common, so that it makes it easier to write your answer at the end. Questions about that? Okay, so I want to see if you kind of understand what you're doing. So you can use your notes for this, but if you'll pull out a sheet of paper, I'm going to give you a problem to do, and when you're finished, you'll just turn that in, and you're free to go after that. Okay, so it can be like half sheet of paper or whatever. It doesn't matter. If you are zooming in right now, if you will do this on a sheet of paper, and then you can email it to me, just the picture of the paper. Okay, so the problem that I'm giving you, so this is like your exit ticket. Make sure you put your name on it. Same thing at home, especially if you're taking a picture of it, make sure you put your name on it. And your problem is x squared plus 3x minus 5x minus 15. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't see that. When you're finished, you can turn it in, you're free to go. Thank you. 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 Oh, come here. You wrote problem down wrong. That should be a squared, and then kind of go back through and whatnot. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Oh, come back. These two, they only have an X in common because that one only has one X, so you can only take one out. Thank you. Yep, thank you. So that is an X squared, so this has two X's, that only has one X. So you can only take one X out. So you're just gonna write X out front. And then just rewrite that. Thank you. Do you know how to do it? Because you didn't show your work. You sure? Hope so. No.
So would that make it the X2?
No, because this is two X's. So when you take one out, you only have one left.
So just be X?
Just X.
Okay.
Thank you. So here, this X squared means two X's, and this 3X just means like one X. So you only have one X in common. So that should just be an X there.
Okay, so just right there.
And then so like your answer is just X plus 3, X minus 5. Does that make sense? Thank you. Yeah, what did you take out of the second parentheses to go from 5X to X and 15 to 3?
So it would be 3. Would it be 3?
What did you divide out here? Like, how did you get from negative 5X? How did you get this X plus 3?
I just wrote down the X.
You can't do that. You got to look at these two and see what they have in common. So negative 5X and 15.
Would it be 3 at all?
No, because 3 didn't go into 5. That's 5.
Oh, okay.
So take out a negative 5.
Now the question.
Yes.
So on this, it says there's 2 parts.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way I can do this day?
Well, this part's actually on this day.
This day? Okay.
And that part's on that day. But do you have a 11 o'clock class?
No.
Talk to me, and I bet we can figure out a way for you to take part 1 at 9 o'clock and part 2 at 11 o'clock.
Okay.
So I will not remember. So just remind me when we get then.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you, Tatiana. Javiana, are you still there? Just let me know if you are. Okay, sorry. Okay, give me just a second, Javiana. Actually, if you'll just start answering this question, have you attended class at all this semester? Is this your first day? Thank you, Madison. You can go. So there you go. So what did you say those two have in common?
5.
And it's negative because the first thing is negative. So you want to pull out a negative 5, and then you need to divide it out to get the stuff in the middle.
Oh.
Okay, so Javiana, if you will, I have you counted for attendance today that you're here, but you need to catch up on what you've missed. So what you need to do is when you go to our class on Math 131 on D2L, if you go to the content section, you should be able to see week 1. Yeah, here's a folder that says week 1, and under that, here's all the videos for week 1 that you missed last week. So go in and watch all those videos so you can get caught up on the for the semester. Okay, so that first day is syllabus stuff, but then it's also a little bit of notes. This one's Wednesday, it's all notes. Friday's all notes also. Okay, so just let me know if that sounds good. There you go. You got it. You're welcome. Just keep on working on it, and it'll start making sense. All of my work that's due already. Perfect. Thank you, Javiana. I will see you on Wednesday, either Zooming or in class. Okay. Oh, Let me stop recording this.